So I have a confession to make. One of my favorite passages of scripture in the Bible is also one of my least favorite scriptures. So, welcome to a special edition of Christianish. This is the podcast for women who have Bibles but don't necessarily have boundaries. My name is Keshia Rice. I'm a dating coach and hypnotherapist. And that passage of scripture that I am talking about is Proverbs 31. It is one of my favorite passages of scripture because I think that the way that this woman is described, Proverbs 31 talks about a woman who is a woman of God. The way that this woman is described, I think, is a role model in balancing masculine and feminine energy and what the ideal version of a wife, mother, and entrepreneur looks like. It is also one of my least favorite scriptures because of how it's often used in churches. So I grew up Pentecostal, about as conservative as you can get. And whenever I heard Proverbs 31, it was always only in the context of her being a wife and mother and focusing on, her husband loves her, her children say that she's blessed, all of that, which there's nothing wrong with that. I am a wife myself. I plan to become a mother at some point, and I want people to think that I'm good at those things too. However, I'm also a business owner. Before I was a business owner, I was a journalist. I worked in news, nominated for 2 Emmys. And I want people to recognize me for those things as well, right? There are multitudes within me. There are multitudes within most women that I know. And I think that we deserve to be loved and appreciated for all we do, not just what we do inside of a household. So with that in mind, I was thinking about this, and I actually thought we should take a blast from the past and go back to 2020 me, because I did a workshop on the Proverbs 31 woman for another business owner. I did it for her group, and luckily she has given me permission to share this. We might have more of these. I don't know if you go back a couple of weeks, you will see that I ended 2024 with another series that I had done for someone else that I thought was pretty good. And let me know what you think of these episodes, because I have done quite a few speaking engagements. And if I can reach out to these people that I did speaking engagements for, because, once I do something for them, it becomes their property. But if I can reach out to them and get permission to use those recordings on this podcast, I will do that if you're enjoying these. So I don't want this intro to get too long. We're already, 3.5 minutes in. So without further ado, again, this was a workshop that I did talking about the Proverbs 31 woman. And if you are a business owner, then you will particularly enjoy this, because that was the audience that I gave this talk to. But if you keep listening past the first, say, 5 or 6 minutes, then we will get into, I start talking more about how the Proverbs 31 woman balances masculine and feminine energy. And I talk more about her role as a wife and as a mother, and about all of the amazing characteristics that she has beyond just being those things. So I hope you enjoy it. Again, let me know if you want more of this. If you're watching this on YouTube, you can do that in the comments section. If you are listening to the podcast, then leave a review, and I will talk to you very soon. Love you so much. Bye. We're talking about the Proverbs 31 woman, the woman that is talked about in Proverbs 31, 10 through 31. And there's 3 things that I want you to really notice about this woman. The Proverbs 31 woman is a woman of femininity, godly femininity. She is a woman of priorities and principles. and she is a woman of business. So we're going to break those three things down today. And let's start with the business. So, one of the things that I find incredibly fascinating when I talk to people who aren't Christian is that they get this idea that the Bible's old fashioned when it comes to ideas about women. Something that being Christian is anti feminist. And that is so not true. The Bible is full of incredibly strong women. When you look at Sarah, when you look at Esther, when you look at Abigail, one of David's wives, and one of the best love stories and just best stories in the Bible. In the meantime, the Proverbs 31 woman is another example of this, because talk about feminist. This woman was a business owner. She was an independent woman who had a husband, but also was very much capable of taking care of herself. So when we look at the Proverbs 31 woman, what are some of the things that we can learn from her when it comes to business? First of all, it is said that the average millionaire has at least 7 different streams of income. 7. And you look at the Proverbs 31 woman, and she is a woman with multiple streams of income. So in those 20 verses that I read, you hear she considers a field and buys it. She was in real estate. She is in trade. She sews garments and then she sells them. She sells sashes to the merchants. She sells garments at, the market that they would have had back in biblical days. So this is a woman who has multiple streams of income. And this is a woman who, if one of her businesses failed, she would not be hosed. And that is something that I want you to consider as a business owner yourself. Not to say that you need to open multiple businesses, but it is smart sense to have other ways to make income. Can you also freelance? Even if you don't do it now, would you be able to? Are you investing? Are you saving? What are other ways that you could be bringing in money? Another thing that the Proverbs 31 woman teaches us about business is business common sense. And I want to say this in a very nice way, but I myself have been in business as a dating coach for about a year and a half now. And sometimes when women come to me and ask me for business advice, they will say, oh, I want to go into business. I want to do something that I'm passionate about. And passion is great. Passion is awesome. But I'll say, okay, what is it that you're passionate about that you want to go into business with? And, you'll get responses that are along the lines of, oh, I want to make $1 million teaching pigs how to dance. And that's not a real example that I've gotten. But the reason why I point this out is because when you look at the Proverbs 31 woman, she is a woman who is in businesses that have demand, buying land. She's a trader. She is a merchant. She sells things that people want. And I really want you to get that, because when it comes to being a business owner, especially those of us who are in creative fields, it's amazing to be creative. It is amazing to have passion, but we also have to make sure that we have an audience for the things that we are trying to promote and trying to sell. So make sure that you are using some business common sense the way the Proverbs 31 woman was. I wish I knew what her name was. I know she's an example, but I would have liked the name just to make it easier. The other thing that I want you to consider when it comes to the Proverbs 31 woman in business is that she is a woman of action. I say this all the time to my audience, and I hope that you take this home as well. Closed mouths don't get fed. And God can't bless what you don't give him. So if you are saying, I want to do this, I want to start a business, I want to grow my business, I want to scale my business, I want to do this thing, not just in business, in life, I want to lose weight, I want to go out there and meet the right one, whatever the case may be, you have to be taking action. You have to be giving God something to bless. And hemming and hawing and not knowing what you're going to do and sitting around asking 50 million different people for advice, that ain't it, sis. Here's the thing. When you look at the Proverbs 31 woman,
She gets up early. She's not sleeping in and complaining about how she never has enough time. You know, she considers a field and buys it. So she looks at the field, she weighs the pros and cons, and then she takes action and she buys it. She doesn't just sit around and wait for life to happen. And, there's something to be said for just taking action. I know that that's a scary thing, but messy action is way better any day than no action. So make sure that you are a woman of action. And the other thing that I want to make a point of when it comes to the Proverbs 31 woman in business is that she's known for her works. You know, verse 31 says, "Honor her for all that her hands have done. Let her works bring her praise at the city gate." One of the things that I notice a lot when it comes to being female and being Christian and being in business is that we have all these things in our head telling us that we're not allowed to shine, that we're not allowed to put ourselves out there, that if we do put ourselves out there, we are bragging, and that we have to be meek and humble. This passage of scripture talks about this woman's works being praised. If you are out here doing something that you love, you're out here doing something that you're passionate about, and it brings value to the world, you need to be visible. You need to be visible. Why would God give you a gift and then tell you to hide it someplace? That makes no sense, right? So, again, the Proverbs 31 woman is a woman of business, priorities and principles, and femininity. She's a woman of business because she has multiple streams of income. She uses common sense. She's a woman of action, and she's known for her works. So let's get into that priorities and principles. When you look at this passage of scripture, and again, if you're just joining, we are talking about Proverbs 31, 10 through 31. When you look at the scripture as it relates to priorities and principles, the Proverbs 31 woman is a woman of family. You can see throughout this passage about how she puts her family first. She makes sure that her children, that her household is all clothed in scarlet. The very beginning of the passage talks about how, she brings her husband good, not harm, all of the days of his life. She talks about when winter comes, she's not afraid for, how her family's going to be. She knows that they're good. She knows that they're clothed and that they have warm clothes. This woman is a good boss. Verse 15 talks about how she not only makes sure that her family is okay, but she makes sure that her female servants are okay as well. So she prioritizes being fair to her workers. And if you are in a position right now where you're, hiring freelancers or you're hiring part-time or full-time, that is an important value. It's not just about your customer service and how much money you can make. You want to treat everybody that you do dealings with right, anyone you collaborate with. So being a good boss, being a good collaborator is important. And here's something that I see so many women struggle with. The Proverbs 31 woman prioritizes herself and self-care. And she does this in two ways. One, back to that whole business and multiple streams of income, being a woman was incredibly hard during the biblical days. Not that it's a walk in the park now, but especially during the biblical days, it was an incredibly hard thing. And women were so reliant on their husbands. You look at a woman who, like the Proverbs 31 woman, is in business and she can write her own checks. God forbid if something had happened to her husband, she would have been good. But she also prioritizes herself when you look at verse 22. It mentions she's clothed in fine linen and purple. And this is one of the biggest mistakes that I see women make all the time. They get this idea that everybody else has to come first. How many women, and you don't have to take my word for it, look in your own life. How many women do you know their kids always look great? Their kids are always clean, hair is always done, kids look perfect, kids get everything they need, and mom is walking around in sweats and really old tennis shoes. You know women like that. And don't lie to me and say that you don't. How many women have you seen before who are married and their husbands are happy as can be? And every time you see the woman, every time you see her, she looks older. She looks stressed. She's unhappy. This is a woman who takes care of herself and she looks good. And because of that, she's more vital for it. Also, this is a woman who prioritizes community. So the passage talks about her giving to the needy and giving to the poor. Here's the thing, as creatives, as women of business and women of God, we are meant to make sure that whatever we do is not just about us. We always have to have a priority for other people as well. Now, that priority is secondary to our own because you can't pour from an empty cup. You have to take care of yourself. Back to the fact that this woman clothes herself in fine linen. Um, but after you take care of yourself, you do have to serve others as well. So, what have we talked about just now? The Proverbs 31 woman is a woman of business. We talked about how she is a woman of priority and principles, and we talked about those priorities and principles. Her family, being a good businesswoman and a good boss. She prioritizes herself and makes sure that she is clothed well, and she is a woman of community. Now, the final one is something that it may take you a little bit to grasp, but the Proverbs 31 woman is a feminine woman. And I don't know when this happened, but our society has gotten to a point where people act as if there's something wrong with being feminine, as if there's something wrong with being a woman. And women especially get this idea that they have to operate in masculine energy. As a dating coach, this is the main issue that I deal with is high-powered women who operate in their masculine, and it's a complete turnoff to men, and then they wonder why they're single. God created you to be a woman. He created you to be feminine. And here is how the Proverbs 31 woman shows her femininity. So she allows her husband to have that leadership position. And some of you are going to be like, oh no, hold on, because like I'm a boss too, and I can lead too, and I don't need no man to be head of the household and all that good stuff. If you are like that, you're not going to like what I have to say. But here's the thing. Women, feminine energy is the energy of reception. Um, I don't want to get into a high school lesson about anatomy, but if you think about it, you will see that men are the givers and women are the receivers. If you do not get that reference, think for a minute. I promise you will understand. But with that being said, one of the main things that a man needs when it comes to, making him feel like a man is appealing to his ego. So if you look at the Proverbs 31 woman, she is a woman who, let me go back to the very beginning of the passage. Proverbs 31:11 talks about how her husband has full confidence in her and how she is constantly bringing him good, not harm. If you go later into the verse, then you see that he sits at the gate with the elders and he's praised. And you notice that he is the one sitting at the gate. This is a woman who has multiple businesses, multiple streams of income. She could easily have a place at the gate. She brings in money, but she chooses not to do that. And I want to point this out because a confident woman knows that she doesn't have to. This passage of scripture is all about praising this woman for how great she is and how great her works are. Back to when we were talking about visibility, her works are renowned. Everybody knows who she is. Everybody knows that she's awesome. Everybody knows that she's worthy of praise. She doesn't have to force herself into a position in order for people to know that she's great. And that is the true power of femininity. When you fully embrace being a woman, you're not working in drive and aggression the way that men do. Drive, aggression, push, that comes naturally to them. When you operate in your feminine energy and you embody that, people see you, you turn heads, you get noticed, and you don't have to force yourself into a boardroom. You don't have to force yourself into conference rooms. You don't have to force yourself into positions. Believe me, I've been in business about a year and a half, and almost every opportunity I've gotten, I have not had to even ask for. I get approached, will you appear on my podcast? I get approached, will you do this live? Will you guest post and write this article? Will you come speak? Because I don't feel the need to push and force. And yeah, there's one thing about pitching yourself. There's nothing wrong with that. But so many women in business believe that they have to, work hard like a man. And there's nothing wrong with like the Russell Brunsons and the Gary V's and Tony Robbins. There's nothing wrong with them. It's just what got them ahead in their careers, we don't have to do. We just don't. So, she's feminine because she doesn't force herself into situations. She allows her work to speak for herself. Also, and I'm sorry guys, I am just getting over a cold, so excuse my voice. But as a feminine woman, verse 25 talks about how she's a woman of strength and dignity. And just kind of hammering in that point, feminine energy is powerful energy. And when you know that you are a strong woman and you know that you're truly a strong woman, not the type of woman who has to like convince people that she's strong, when you are a woman who does your business in a righteous way and you are truly serving God and you're truly serving other people, you will get rewarded. When you focus on serving others, God takes care of you. When you focus on making other people happy, the money comes. It will always come. But you have to have your priorities and your principles right. Back to point number 2 with the Proverbs 31 woman, you have to have those things right first. And, feminine energy is the energy of nurture, it's the energy of creativity, it's the energy of fun and lightheartedness. I mentioned to you guys, one of my favorite verses being where it talks about she laughs at the days to come. Verse 25, she's clothed with strength and dignity. She can laugh at the days to come. And I just love that idea of we talk all the time. Like we give the advice to our friends all the time when they're going through hard things, God's got you, girl. God's got you, sis. Like, don't worry about it. You're going to be okay. How many of us follow our own advice? How many of us really relax in knowing that God takes care of us? How many of us really and truly laugh at the days to come because we know that the best is ahead? Because I truly believe that the best is ahead. That's what gets me up in the morning. Knowing that whatever is happening now, when I'm having a bad day, when things aren't great between, me and my business, when things aren't great at my freelancing job, when things aren't great with my husband, I know that better is ahead. And when things are awesome with me and my husband, and when things are awesome at the place where I freelance, when things are awesome with my business, things are awesome with my family, I know that there's even better yet to come. I truly want you to be at that place where feminine energy is being able to handle things with grace and being able to enjoy life no matter what position you are in right now. Because better is ahead. I can promise you that. And she speaks with wisdom. I'm trying to think of a nice way to say this. I'm not knocking pop culture. Before I became a coach, I was a journalist, TV journalist, and that is actually where I still freelance is at a television station. So I get drama, I get ratings, I get that drama is great for ratings, but media nowadays, whether that is TV, whether that is social media, whatever, has given off this perception that it's okay to be loud and extra out. Talking about women being graceful and having dignity It is not okay to be out there all the time spouting at the mouth. It's not great to be out there all the time just word vomiting. Like, have an opinion and have a strong opinion. I'm okay with the fact that people don't always agree with me. The middle of the road is where you get killed. So I'm okay with people not always agreeing with me. The people who love me, and that's all that matters. That being said, I make sure that when I speak, I do my best to speak with wisdom, like the Proverbs 31 woman. You know, and that is something that is sorely missing from our society. You can disagree all you want. You can have problems with people all you want. You're not meant to like everybody, just like everybody's not meant to like you. But speak with wisdom, season your words, and make sure that when you have a strong opinion, people can disagree with you, but they can't say you were rude about it. They can't say that you were unintelligent about it. So make sure that you speak with wisdom and that you choose your words carefully. And again, you see all throughout this passage of scripture that the Proverbs 31 woman is a woman of nurture, which again is very feminine, and she's a woman of creativity, back to that multiple streams of income and having more than one way to make money. So these are 3 things that I really want you to consider the next time you hear about the Proverbs 31 woman. She is a woman who is feminine. She's a woman of priorities and principles, and she is a woman of business, a good entrepreneur. And I just want to challenge you. The next time you are on Facebook or you are on Instagram and you use that hashtag Proverbs 31 woman, are you really a Proverbs 31 woman? Are you really striving to be a Proverbs 31 woman?
This podcast is brought to you by Contessa Digital.